In our fast-paced world, it's easy to get swept up in the currents that surround us. But we are the authors of our own life story, and we are infinitely capable of creating the change we want to see within us and beyond. Welcome to Shaping Freedom, a show where we explore and share practical ways to cultivate extraordinary life experiences. I'm your host, Lisane Basquiat. I'm a teacher, entrepreneur, and life strategist. After a career as a corporate executive, I embarked on my own path of entrepreneurship and focused on the human and spirit connection. I come from generations of trailblazing entrepreneurs, artists, healers, and champions of human dignity. This week, I'm joined by none other than Stu Massengill. Stu is a life coach and personal development speaker that has inspired millions through his seminars and events. He's worked with one of the top personal development coaches in the world, Tony Robbins, as a national speaker and peak performance advisor for over 10 years. He also hosts his own podcast, Finding Direction, where he showcases his strategies and personal reflections on life, personal improvement, and how to best constructively approach difficult, if not tragic, events. In this episode, we discuss how important it is to reflect inward and how to find solutions when personal issues arise. And we also talked about how to make sure that we all achieve what's possible for us. Everyone, this is my conversation with Stu Massengill. Stu, I am so happy that you're here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. I know we chatted on your podcast, Finding Direction, recently, and I see this as somewhat of a part two to that conversation.
Sure. Same here.
Stu Massengill is the host of the Finding Direction podcast. And it's a podcast that really talks about a lot of the stuff that we talk about around finding direction and reverse engineering your life and what you can do to find clarity, I suppose, in some of life's challenges or from within some of life's challenges. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you nailed it on the head. Helping people just get clear on, how do you build a life that you're excited about? It was on the conversation we had on my podcast when we were having the conversation about, how we applaud people for being bold enough to live a life that sets your soul on fire. And that was one of the things that you also, share and encourage people and help people do. So yeah, I think we're very much in alignment with, that message.
Yeah. One of the things about this podcast is I typically have kind of a general direction for where I would like us to play in terms of conversation. And what I'd love to talk about today, and I didn't preempt this for you at all, which I typically don't do at all, because I like us to just, the Shaping Freedom podcast is really about a conversation and inviting people to witness a conversation and to participate in a conversation that we're having. And what I'd love to talk about in taking both this mission for Shaping Freedom, which is really around helping people to create for themselves a life that sets their soul on fire. And what you talk to people about, Stu, around really discovering discovering direction for yourself and finding some clarity. One of the things that I'd really love to talk about today is what happens when you're in the middle of setting your life on fire, creating an exciting life for yourself. And when you're feeling kind of lost in that, what do you do to help yourself to come out of that? And the reason I'm, forgive me for a moment while I kind of gather my thoughts while I'm talking
Yeah.
out loud, thinking out
Yeah.
loud. I'm I am encountering a lot of people who are burnt out and tired.
Mm.
And I'm encountering a lot of people, both, coming closer to me, and also what I'm watching and observing in the conversations that people are having, that even in the midst of doing this thing called life, where people are meeting their goals and working toward them, or creating lives for themselves that sets their soul on fire, there also seems to be this collective kind of exhaustion and some feelings of sadness that are happening in the world. And I'd love for you and I to have a conversation around some of that, really acknowledging that that's also going on in the world while people are creating all these incredible things and are, doing all of these amazing things. I'd love to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that comes to my mind when I hear you say that is, I think part of it is first starting off and like allowing yourself to take a fresh breath of air. I think sometimes when we can sit in the middle and we're in this place trying to figure it out, we can scramble, we can move all over the place. And if we do it in a stressed sort of environment, it doesn't help us make progress as fast as we can. So I think really a first piece of it is, if you're burnt out, if you're going through stuff, if there's things that are heavy, like allowing yourself to just take a deep breath and say, okay, like it's okay to take a fresh breath and just pause in this moment of, not knowing what I want to do, feeling lost for a moment, right? Not forever. And then I think a big thing that is powerful that I've seen in my life and with the people I work with, and I think would be powerful for anyone listening to this conversation now, is just the idea of looking at your life through a standpoint of energy. And it's like, okay, what are the things that suck energy out of your life? What are the things that add energy to your life? And if you can follow the silver lining of what increases my energy, what makes me feel alive, what makes time fly, right? And what are the things that when you do them, just don't do that for you and kind of suck the energy out of you. And if you can follow the energy, I think it can lead people to a place that they can, after they take a fresh breath, they go, okay, let me breathe. I'm feeling lost. Just breathe. Okay, now I've taken a fresh breath. Let me look at my energy and let me start to sort of look at the next step of my life based off of, okay, how can I follow the thing that is more energy?
Mm-hmm. What do you think about this idea of feeling lost? Like, what does that look like in your observation and in the conversations that you've been having? What are people struggling with that has them feeling lost?
It's a great point. I think one aspect, again, of when you're lost is it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to be in it. And for my own life, like when I felt lost before, it can be tough. You know what I mean? It's not this like happy, jolly place where you're like, I'm lost and everything's great. It's like, you can be in a place of being like, I'm lost and this isn't fun. And like, am I just on autopilot and just going through the motions of the day?
Yeah.
But I think where I see people get stuck is sort of twofold. One, I think your mindset is a massive, massive piece of getting unlost. They say like, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So if you think that, you just you can't create a life that excites you. You can't create a life where you actually get out of the bed morning and you're like pumped to go to this career or work on this business. If you go, you know what, I just don't think that's really realistic, then you're right for you. And you're not going to create that in your life. But if on the other hand, you can change the mindset and go, you know what, it's Like there's someone else in the world right now that's living a life that they jump out of bed and they're excited and they go through their whole day and they're energized and they get to the end of their day and they feel fulfilled. They feel happy about what they accomplished today. And then they go enjoy the rest of their day after they're done with work. And someone else is doing that. And if someone else is doing that, then it's possible that I can do it with my life. And I think the moment when you begin to switch that mindset shift of it's just not realistic to it's really possible, I think that's a huge first step, because a lot of the times from my own life when I was going through it and people I work with, I think that's one thing that we put a limitation on ourselves of saying, you know what, that's just, you just can't really create that life, which is, if you believe it, it's true for you. So I think that's the first piece is making a mindset shift. And then I think the second thing is, as we go to figure out, right, quote unquote, what's next, sometimes it can feel overwhelming, right? It's like, I could do this, I could do that. There's these other things, there's those things, like there's so many options. And I think if you look in life, yeah, there's a lot of things you could do for the next step. That is true. There's a lot of possibilities out there. But if instead of looking externally at, I could do this, I could do that, this, that, the other, there's so many things. If you switch it and instead of going externally, you go internally and ask yourself, again, take your limitations off when you go through this process, because it's easy for that brain, that part of your brain to come in and go, you couldn't do that. That doesn't work. You're not, it's easy for that part of your brain to come in. But if you just say, you know what, I'm going to put that to the side and ask myself, like, if I had a magic wand, what would I really want to do with my life? You know, if I could choose to do something every day, what would it be? Or if you don't know the specific answers to that, you could say, okay, well, what are things that I do that I enjoy doing? What are things that I do that give me energy? What are things that I do that when I do them, time flies? Or what's something that I'm naturally curious about right now? And I think if you answer one or multiple of those sort of questions or prompts, you're going to figure out that you probably have really like 4, 5, 6 things that actually interest you, that you'd actually want to do with your life. And so I think for me, that's the second piece to guide people to figure out what's next, is make the mindset shift and then get clear on what are the 4, 5, 6 things that maybe would really actually charge you up in your life. And then that's sort of the first half. And then the second half turns into, okay, well, how do we actually make that real? And that's a whole other aspect of that.
Yeah. I think when I think about the whole idea of a mindset shift, I agree with you. And I've heard that, like, you know, if whatever you believe is actually the thing, because that's what you put your energy behind, what you believe. So if you believe that you are burdened, then you're probably going to exude that and kind of bring that energy to yourself. If you're in a relationship with someone and you believe that you that everything has to be on you, then that's kind of how you live, and the types of interactions that you invite into interactions and dynamics that you invite into your life. And I think that idea of feeling, if when you're lost, you believe that you're alone, then you also create a world where you are alone and where you can't even see what's outside of you. You can't see the support that's around you. You cannot see, you know, even see your way to some of the questions that you suggested, you know, some of the questions that you can ask yourself. I find that asking myself questions in journaling or even in meditation is an amazing way for me to get myself into a different place, because with questions comes possibility.
Right.
You know, and not the questions of like, am I mad right now? Because the answer is going to be yes or no, you know, but asking myself the questions, you know, around like, what can I do to get out of this feeling of feeling lost? Or how can I resolve this feeling of not having a direction right now? and really just posing those questions to myself so that I can open up the possibilities within me, brainstorm some of the possibilities around answering those questions in a way that helps me to energetically move forward.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Why do you think people get stuck in that? If we have sort of the mindset shift, like, why do you think people get stuck and can sometimes almost attach themselves to the mindset that doesn't have possibility linked to it?
I think that there's a lot of that's a great question, Stu. And I think that there's a lot of expectation that people have of themselves, and an expectation that they imagine, real or not, that the world has of them. And I think that sometimes what happens is people get stuck in almost like a deer in the headlights. They don't know how to move forward because they don't know what to do. They don't know what the right thing is to do. And I think that people, if you're in a space where you have lost touch with yourself and you've lost the connection to your own wisdom and the value of your own wisdom, you can find yourself in a place of uncertainty, extreme uncertainty, because you're looking for people outside of you to give you the answers. But they can only pose questions that come from within where they are. And so then we feel like this anger, like, why aren't they asking me the right question? Because they don't know the questions to ask. You have to ask yourself. I think people get stuck because of expectation.
Yeah, it's almost, it's like sometimes we're looking for other people to give us guidance, to tell us what to do.
Mm-hmm.
When the reality is you need to ask yourself the questions, you need to answer the questions, and you need to almost have this like blind faith attached to the answer of the questions that you're asking yourself, right? Because
trust yourself.
Yeah, if someone else comes in and says, oh yeah, you should just turn left and then take 3 rights and you'll be there, you go, okay, well, they said turn left and take 3 rights. So like, that's probably the right thing to do. So I'll do that. But if you ask a question and your answer says, take a left and then take 3 rights, you go, well, what if it's the wrong thing? What if it's not, like, nobody else told me to do it? I told myself to do it. So is it really right? But it's like, it's your question. It's your answer, only the answer for you. But you have to be willing, once you get that answer, to say, you know what? This is my answer for a reason. And I have to have blind faith attached to it and say, I'm going to follow it. And from everything I've seen with, on our show, we've had 350 episodes almost now.
Oh, wow. I'm a hater. And the second, I'm a hater. Ryan, we got to get it going. I'm kidding.
But the one thing I've unquestionably seen with every single person that comes on the show and is like living in their purpose is they undoubtedly follow that little voice inside of them. That questions they ask and the answers that come, they've learned to trust it. And I think that's how you get to creating a life that you really love, is you're in touch with yourself. You're getting answers and you are accepting the answers that come to you and taking action from them, rather than, well, my mom said this, my friend said that, my boss said I should do. It's like, no one is you. Like you are literally the only one that has the answer. And it's a scary thought. But it's like, man, I'm the only one that has the answer to the question. Like, yeah, like you can lean on other people for insights and guidance and like their thoughts and their wisdom. But at the end of the day, like, you have to follow the answer that you give yourself.
Yes, 100%. And I think people, when I think back on my own life and I think back on times where I myself felt lost or directionless, it was always, because I wasn't in a place of full trust. When I sit down and I connect with myself and I make a decision from that place, I am full steam ahead with no doubt, um, with no doubt at all. I'm just moving. And the times that I remember stumbling or not being completely clear, those are times where someone told me something, but I hadn't fully committed on the inside. You know, my mind shift hadn't completely turned toward that because it wasn't necessarily my reality. You know, when I went to school, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you, when I first went to college, and I went as an adult, I went and to study to be an accountant. And for anyone who knows me, that doesn't make any sense. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's just not who I am. I love money. I love the counting of money. I love,
Yeah.
you know, I'm very driven by the way things add up, money and life, things in general. So I love numbers, but I'm not an accountant. I'm just not. That's not who I am. And I did that because at the time I believed that I didn't believe that's not true. At the time, I believed that it would be best for me to follow the lead and direction that my father had, which was my father was first, I'm first generation. My father was a Haitian immigrant. My mother was from Puerto Rico. And it was like, you go to school, you graduate from college, you do these things, you take these steps. And I was told that that was what I was supposed to do. So I went out and I attempted to do it, but I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. And what I believed about myself was that I was here to help, that I was here to take these experiences that I was having and to turn them into something that would be of service and of help and support to other people. At the time, I wasn't sure about how I was going to realize that, but that was really the truth. And that was what I believed. So me going to school to be an accountant was a one semester thing because it did not make sense.
Yeah.
It didn't make a bit of sense for me.
You know what they say, if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make money. Doesn't make sense, it doesn't make dollars.
Exactly. And so it just didn't make any sense for me. And so I course corrected. And it's yet another example and experience in my life where when I follow myself, when I trust myself, I always wind up in the place that I want to be, even if I fail along the way. But it's really hard to do something that you don't believe in, I guess is the bottom line of what I'm saying, what I'm sharing.
Yeah. I love it. So powerful.
And I think that there's a lot of expectation from people today that's, some of it is self, enforced and some of it is real. And I think there are a lot of folks who are in this place, we're in this time in history where, we're doing a lot of things and we're doing them publicly. And there was a time where people who were public were kind of there. They were out there doing something different. And today, any one of us, is out there on social media, hosting podcasts, we're all talking publicly. And I think there's also some expectation around that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think expectation is, it's not a friendly thing. I don't think, cause you have expectations, they can let you down a lot of the time, right? Like one of my mentors, Tony Robbins, I've been fortunate enough to speak and do some work with Tony for the last 3 years now. And one of the things Tony says all the time is he goes, you change your expectations for appreciation, everything in your life changes in a matter of moments.
Mm-hmm. Talk more about that.
Yeah. Well, I think, one thing for our listener, just to ask them as well, is a question I would be curious about is like, what are you having expectations around in your life right now for the person that's listening to this? And what's a way you could turn your expectation into appreciation, right? So like an example could be, let's say in my relationship, right? I have a girlfriend. She's an amazing person in my life that I feel really lucky to have in my life. And I could have a day where I go, you know what? I expected that you were going to do this thing for me. And if it doesn't happen, maybe she gets home from work and we're doing something later. And now I have this negative energy around like, oh, I was expecting you to do this and you didn't do it. But if I can just flip it and say, well, instead of just expecting you to do X, Y, Z or whatever, like, what if I just appreciated you for loving me, for being there for me, for supporting me, for the thousands of other things that I could say. And if I just change the lens at which I look through, in this example, it's relationship, but it could be many other things. It could be maybe you have some expectations about, well, where should I be in my life right now? And I should be at this stage in this phase, and I should have 3 kids, and I should be making X amount of money. And that's my expectation. And you don't have it. And because of that, you have this just like, it just feels like your insides are being pulled apart because your expectations aren't being met. But if you go, you know what? Let me change my expectation from 3 kids, this job, this income to, well, how can I appreciate all of these things I've achieved in my life and all of this stuff I've done? And maybe I'm not quite where I want to be yet, but I'm closer than where I was a year ago. And let me appreciate that. And I think it's powerful because it changes like all of the dynamics of the emotions that you live in on a daily basis. But what it also does is it actually helps you take more action towards the thing that you actually want in your life. Because now you're not sitting in this negative energy of, I expected it and I don't have it. Now you're in an energy of appreciation, which actually allows you to take a bit more action in your life.
There are times when I'm feeling my suckiest. The thing that always gets me out of it, suckiest means when I'm just like blah. When I'm like, wah, this didn't happen, that didn't happen, wah. That's my suckiest. Whenever I'm in that space of feeling at my suckiest, what I do is I grab my journal and I start making a list of what I'm grateful for. And I literally and sometimes I'm in such a sucky mood that it takes a little more for me to actually get into that space of being able to list anything out because I'm really in my stuff. Right. And I'm like, wah. Yeah. So I will start with something as simple as I'm grateful that I can get my fingers to move to write, or I'm grateful that I have a journal. I'm, like wherever I need to start in order to start to move that energy into this direction of appreciation and gratitude is what I do. And I always feel better by the time I'm done. Sometimes it takes a little longer for me to get into the ability to actually flow in that way because I'm feeling sucky. But it always shifts my mindset from one of complaining and whining and pity, the pity party into feeling some joy and understanding about where I'm at in that particular moment. And I think it also, when what came to mind for me as you were sharing that is a biblical scripture of all things, which is, you reap what you sow. And so where you put your energy and attention is the thing that's going to grow for you. And so if you're focused, if you have like 1,000 wonderful things that have happened in your day and you have, your significant other or someone who doesn't put the glass in the dishwasher, right? And you focus all your attention on that one thing, that thing becomes bigger than everything else that's happened in your day. And you kind of like everything else, you becomes blind. You become blinded to all the wonderful things. So I think trying to focus on, consciously focusing on the good brings more good.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I love, to practice myself when I'm in a funk or if I'm working with someone just to help create like momentum in life is at the end of the day, just sitting down, and sometimes I'll write it out. Sometimes I'll just do it in my head. But at the end of every day, before I go to bed, just asking myself, what are 3 things that I could really celebrate that I did today? And it can be big, it can be small, it can be, today I woke up and I had a really good conversation with this random stranger at the grocery store. It could be, and I'm going to celebrate that. It could be, okay, today, I got this speaking engagement and I really want to celebrate that. That's something awesome. It could be, oh, this thing happened on the podcast and I'm going to celebrate that. It could be, I had a really good lunch and I'm going to celebrate that. But it's like at the end of the day, training my brain to say, what can I celebrate today? What went right? Because I think one of the true statements is like, failure can't breed success. Like success breeds success. So if you go to the end of the day going, this thing didn't go right, that thing didn't go right, and you go into the next day, from that energy, you're not going to be able to move in the direction you want faster. Like that negative energy that you carry into the next day kills the momentum that you have. But so it's like, even if you had a rough day, you go, okay, well, I got these 3 little wins. And then you take those 3 little wins to the next day, and it just allows you to build this like beautiful momentum in your life that can kind of shape your life into one that you enjoy.
So there's 3 things you said there that I love that I want to dive into.
Yeah.
You talked about celebrating your wins. Do you have something how do you celebrate your wins?
Yeah.
Stu?
Great question. So I was just at this conference over the weekend. And basically it's a college like conference where you go and you like do a couple talks and stuff and share and pour into some of the leadership within the college world. And this is the second time that I've gone to that conference. It went very well. And so my girlfriend and I last night were like, let's celebrate. So we went and got ice cream. And for me, it was like, that was the way to celebrate. And, we got home from it and it was like, man, that was so fun to just like celebrate that. So for me, that's not how I celebrate every night, but
even if
that's
it was
the most recent
whatever,
way that I celebrate.
Man, that's all good.
That's true. That's true too.
Yeah, I love the idea of conscious celebration. I think that, one of the things that I've said in the past is one of the things I notice is when something bad is happening, there are times where people feel so connected to that bad thing. Like this terrible thing happened and they like bring it in and they bring it to them and like it's the first thing out of their mouth when they speak with you and they like embrace it completely. And we don't always do that with the beautiful, joyful, and happy things that happen in our lives. Almost as if we're afraid that if we celebrate too much, that something bad is going to, like their shoe is going to drop or something. And I call BS on that. And I believe that we should or could really consciously celebrate the wonderful things that are happening in the world. Because something has to tilt this scale. Right? There are sucky things that are happening and there are wonderful things that are happening. And it really is a matter of, like you started this conversation with, really about mindset and what you choose to see. So I think consciously celebrating is a wonderful practice for someone to get into.
I think too, it's like one thing that happened for me, and I know this happens for almost every achiever on the planet. So if our listener right now is an achiever, sometimes what achievers do, and I've just seen this from working with enough people, is that we have this mentality of do, go, 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 do, go, go, go. It's like do, achieve, go, do, achieve, go, and we never take a moment to be like, let me celebrate this thing. And it's such an important part. It's like you achieve something, that you worked so hard. You could work on something for weeks, months, years even, and you celebrate and you achieve it. And you celebrate it for maybe a day. And then you're like, okay, let's do the next thing. Maybe 10 minutes, So it's like, why not give ourselves the gift to, if we achieve something, say, okay, let me like really actually celebrate this and, take that in. And then it does chemically wise in your body, it actually creates more endorphins, things of that sort that make you excited to then go achieve the next thing as well. So there's I think so much importance in celebrating. And I think one of the big things that was a huge shift for me in my life at one point was I would identify myself as like an achiever, right? Someone who is that, like, I want to go, I want to do, I want to make things happen. And one of the just most powerful things I learned once is someone once told me, they were like, you want to achieve this thing. And oftentimes we want to achieve something because we believe it will make us feel a certain way, right? When I get this, I'm going to feel happy. I'm going to feel proud. I'm going to feel X, Y, Z. But the reality is, well, when you achieve that thing, like, who is the person that then decides that you get to be happy, you get to be proud, you get to feel X, Y, Z? And the answer is that it's you, right? Like at that moment, that's when the only way you're going to feel those things is if you say, okay, now I get to feel it. So it's like, if you are the person in charge of feeling the feeling that you want, someone once told it to me this way. I thought it was so beautifully said. They said, rather than achieving to be happy, happily achieve.
Ooh, I love that.
Right? Give yourself the feeling now of whatever it is that you want, and then use that feeling and live with that feeling on the way of achieving this thing that you want.
Rather than achieving to be happy, happily achieve. I love that. Oh, wow.
Right?
That's powerful. That's super powerful.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned training your brain. And I love that, because so much of what we do and so much of the way that we are really comes from having been programmed at some point in our lives. And sometimes we've received the programming and then we reinforce it throughout our lives. And, and if we're able to do that, then we are able also to reprogram our minds into the direction that is in alignment with the things that we want to achieve, the things that set our soul on fire, the things that help us to find direction and purpose. So that idea of like training your brain to see appreciation, to acknowledge appreciation, and to speak about that, training our brains to celebrate consciously the things that happen and to gift ourselves and to give ourselves permission to celebrate. I actually am, my hand is raised for those of you who are listening to this. My hand is raised as one of those folks who used to, like, it would all be about the win. Like, I got to make this thing happen, and I'd make it happen. And before it was done, almost, I would be moving on to the next thing. And I didn't stop at the time to celebrate any of this. And then I felt myself feeling more and more depleted. And a lot of it was because I was depleting my energy without stopping to fill myself back up, which I think is another way of helping people to, who may be feeling lost or directionless or like their fire is kind of out. Sometimes it's because we're not stopping to fill ourselves back up. We're expecting ourselves to operate in a way that we wouldn't even expect our car, or our cars, whether you expect it or not. You don't have gas in your car, it's not running.
Yeah.
And yet we just drive ourselves to, in a way that really is not loving, and almost as if, there's this caring for ourselves that I think has to be with the exertion of energy, just to kind of balance things out a bit. What do you think of that? And how do you replenish and refill?
Great question. Two things that sort of pop into my head is one, such a powerful idea again, is that, like, at the end of the day, when you go through your life and you get to your, wherever you go after life, whatever your beliefs are, it's like there's one person you will have spent your entire life with, and that is yourself. And so for me, I think one of the biggest things I've really made a focal point of my life is saying, okay, if I'm gonna be with myself for the rest of my life, let me like really learn about me, and let me like fall in love with myself. And it sounds almost like, I don't know, maybe silly for some people, but it's like I spend time figuring out, okay, how can I genuinely like love myself? Because some people, it's like the last thing you want to do is be with yourself for 30 minutes in a room, or be with yourself for a day. And it's like, well, if you couldn't be with yourself for a day and you would just go crazy because the thoughts in your head and this and that, it's like, that's not a way to create a quality life. You have to really get to know yourself, whether that's through reading, whether that's through coaching, whether that's through going to events, whether that's through meditating. I mean, whatever form makes sense for you. I think there's such a real aspect of you got to get to know yourself. So that's one part. The second, to answer your question, is for me, I'm just a huge outdoor person, just to share how I personally recharge. So for me, two really main things that recharge me is one, getting outside. At the peak of what that looks like is being in the mountains, snowboarding with people that I love. It's one of my favorite things to do is snowboard and travel and do that. So for me, I've learned through learning about myself that that's one way I really recharge. And then the second way is just spending time with my family. I don't live, a drive to my family. I have to fly to them, not a super long flight. But for me, another way, if I really want to recharge is go home for a weekend, a week, and or have family come out, to where I'm at. But it's like just spending quality time with people that I really genuinely just love and care about. And for me, those are two of the main things I do to recharge. But, I've learned that through, again, learning about myself. So I would just encourage our listener to ask themselves, like, if you're feeling burnt out, if you're feeling meh, if you're feeling, not super good, like, just what's one thing you could do this week to start recharging your battery?
Yeah. And ask yourself.
Yeah. Like there's this idea of being selfishly unselfish. And it's, it's that when you're selfish and you're taking care of yourself, you're meeting your needs, you're taking time to recharge, all that, by being selfish, all of a sudden it's unselfish, because everyone you're around now, you're going to be a better you. You're going to do the things you do at a higher quality because you've been selfish and you've given yourself time to recharge. So I think it's just a powerful idea.
Yeah. And I think that idea of, and that would send us off into a whole other conversation, this idea of selfishness, selfish really is considering yourself. There are negative and positive aspects to almost any behavior. And so selfish could be where you just think about yourself and you don't think about other people and you run over them and all of that. That's selfish. But selfish could also be, hey, this is what I need right now. This, I'm going to I'm going to respond to what it is that I need right now. And giving and allowing yourself a vote in what's going on around you. And I think that, sometimes people, lose energy or feel a loss of energy because they are so busy responding to what other people want from them, and that they're not in tuned to their own voice and hearing themselves. And I think that that's a really important part of self-care and taking care of yourself, is to, in learning who you are, as you mentioned, Stu, to also learn how to recognize your own voice and listening. Because I think that's where a lot of folks really struggle and suffer when, we're talking to ourselves all the time.
A lot.
Right. And we're so attuned to hearing the voice of our parents or our loved ones or our partner or, our dog or like whatever, right? We're so attuned to listen to those external voices, and those aren't bad, but it's like, are you equally attuned to your own voice? Because when you're not, that's how you start to live a life where you feel lost and you feel directionless, because your direction and your guidance really has to come from within. That's really when you feel in alignment. That's really when you feel powerful and aware, is when you are guided by your internal roadmap. And then you can decide how to respond to the suggestions that people outside of you have for you, for how you're going to spend your time, what you're going to do with your career, how you're going to spend your life, what you're going to do with your free time and all of that. The third thing you said that I want to say before we close is you also talked about taking things from one day into the next, and how your recommendation was that you not do that you kind of leave today's things in today and then go into tomorrow in a cleaner way. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I think that's also something that can sometimes contribute to stress. And that is something that I refer to as snowballing. And it's like you have one sucky moment and then it snowballs into another and it snowballs into another. And if you think about, a snowball, kind of like, it gathers steam because it takes on more and more snow and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. And before you know it, you lose sight of what was at the center of that snowball. So I wanted to highlight that you said that for our audience, because snowballing is only good when you're out there in a snowball fight.
Yeah, I think there's like two pieces of that equation that stop the negative snowball and start the positive one. And one was, as I mentioned, right, finding at the end of your day, what are 3 things that I can celebrate, that I can be proud of, big or small, like training your brain to say, I got to the end of the day, I did some incredible things today. Because the truth is, regardless of how crazy your day is, how bad you may think your day was, there's at least 3 things you did today that were pretty incredible, right? You brushed your teeth, right? Celebrate it, right? Whatever it is, find 3 things. You're training your brain for that. And then in the morning, I think the other way to, again, stop the negative snowball, start the positive one, is give yourself a little bit of time, like you spoke about, to practice gratitude. Whether that's writing gratitude down, whether that's doing a meditation and just thinking of what are 3 things I can just like really be grateful for. It could be breath in your air or breath in your lungs. It could be your heart beating. It could be, whatever. Like every morning when I practice gratitude, I practice gratitude for my heart, because you look at the science behind your heart. Your heart beats, I believe it's 120,000 times a day, and you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
It like, if you can't be grateful that miracle is happening in your body, I mean, it's just unbelievable. So what are 3 things you could be grateful for in the morning? And I think if you live in that space of celebrating your wins at the end of the day, waking up, focusing on what are 3 things I can be grateful for, it's pretty hard to live with a negative snowball, because you're constantly reinforcing in your brain what's right, what's good, what can I be grateful for, what did I celebrate, right? It's like you're putting the right things into your program, like we spoke about, that create a better output. Versus at the end of the day, if you're going, this went wrong, that went wrong, and you go, these are the 3 things that suck today. And then you wake up in the morning, you're going, these are 3 things that I have to do that I don't want to do. That the program you're putting in will create a program that comes out that is a negative one, right? So I think that's the way to, I think it'd be pretty hard to live with a negative snowball if you did those.
That's correct. Stu, I have enjoyed this and the other and any future conversations. I enjoy talking to you so much, and the conversations that we're creating. How can people learn more about you, and what do you have coming up?
I would say the best place to just kind of stay plugged in is probably our podcast, the one that you were on. It's called Finding Direction, for anyone that would want to hang out with us. We're on every and all platform. And like we spoke about at the beginning of the show, just the whole idea is, how do you live a life that lights up your soul, that gets you excited, and really just live in alignment with a life that you enjoy. We bring guests on, we have, solo conversations we do, and it's just a real fun place that we get to hang out. So if you want to hang out with us there, we'd love to have you join us again. It's the Finding Direction podcast, and I would say that's probably the best place to go.
Yeah, I encourage you all to listen in. Stu has incredible wisdom and has like great conversation. So if you're looking to participate in that conversation, please do, and share it with your friends and with others that you think could really use some encouragement in, finding their own purpose, their own sense of purpose in their own lives, and reverse engineering their lives into one that they really enjoy living. Stu, thank you so much for coming by. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And thank you to all who are listening. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Stu Massengill, and I hope that you were inspired for your own personal growth journey. Please make sure to check out the first part of our conversation that was broadcast on Stu's podcast, Finding Direction. The links are in the show notes. Before we go, please, please, please always remember to slow yourself down. Try to enjoy your day. And even in the darkest and dimmest of times, remember not to let anything or anyone dull your shine. Thank you so much for listening to the Shaping Freedom with Lisane Basquiat podcast and for sharing part of your day with me. Until next time.